Hey, thank you so much for watching my YouTube channel. Super stoked. Of course, I want you to subscribe. That'd be fantastic. We're continuing our series. This series is called Shady People. And it's interesting, you think about shady people, people that aren't quite, you don't trust them. You might be thinking, well, I'm a shady person. Maybe we have a bad background, just kind of duplicitous maybe, a little play under the table, not quite above board, not quite in the light. And I want to talk, in the Bible, there are very amazing, interesting insights into people who are shady. The Bible has shady people. So last week we talked about Rahab. She's from Joshua. She was a prostitute, a sex worker. And you can say, well, she's a shady person. Well, but it's cool to see what God can do with shady people. But today I want to talk about Lot. Lot, you're like, who's Lot? Lot is Abraham's nephew. And Lot's an interesting guy because we read about Abraham bringing him with him, kind of was like a surrogate dad. Abraham was like a surrogate dad to Lot. But in Genesis chapter 13, it said that Lot had a boatload of wealth, Abraham had a boatload of wealth, and the land couldn't support both of them. And so Abraham, instead of having their herdsmen fighting, for the resources, Abraham and Lot said, let's not have tension between us. Let's separate amicably because we love each other and there's no reason for there to be this kind of tension. So Abraham says to Lot, hey, pick, and if you want to get technical, he's Abram. At this point, he hasn't changed his name yet. But he says, pick the land, whatever you want. You choose. You can choose the well-watered plains or you can choose over here with the higher, less opulent land. So Lot picks the well-watered plains. He goes down there and he lives in a city called Sodom. And the choices that Lot makes, you got to remember, Lot was with Abraham, probably lived with him for several years, but then when they separate, Lot begins to make choices. He lives in the well-watered plains, and then he moves into the city called Sodom. And Sodom turns out to be really not a very good place. It's not a good place for honor, for hospitality, for human rights, personal responsibility. It turns into be a really, really bad place. And while he's there, he lives there, and I get the impression he lives there for several years. His daughters grow up there, and they're engaged to men who are from Sodom. And at one point, God comes and speaks with Abram and says, hey, I'm hearing all this bad stuff from Sodom, and I think I'm going to destroy it. And conversation between Abraham and God about Sodom and Gomorrah. But Abraham intercedes for Lot, says, hey, don't destroy the city. They go back and forth. So 2 angels go down to check the city of Sodom. And when the angels come into the city, they plan to spend the night. I guess they look like men. They plan to spend the night in the city square, but Lot says to him, don't do that. Come and stay with me. And they come to stay in Lot's house, but it says all the men of the city of Sodom, both young and old, they come to Lot's house and demand that Lot turn over these 2 men / angels, demand that he turn them over, these 2 guys, to all the men in the city, because the men in the city want to do horrible things to these 2 guys. Lot goes out and says, don't do that. I'll give you my virgin daughters to replace these, but don't do that. Which you think, hey, that's shady. That's bad news. Why would you give your daughter, this is bad. And then the fact that these guys want to do awful things to these 2 angels, that's bad news too. They're violent and they're demanding, and it's just, the whole thing is bad. The whole thing is shady. And so what happens is Lot goes out and the men are about ready to, beat Lot up from the city. And what's happened is the angels pull Lot back in, they close the door, and the next morning they take Lot, his wife, and his 2 daughters, because their engaged husbands, their fiancés, won't even come with them. They're like, you guys are a bunch of lunatics, you're crazy. And when Lot moved into Sodom, I don't think he had some of that crazy and shady going on in his head. But I think what happened is as he moved into Sodom, some of that crazy and the shady started to affect somewhat him, but absolutely, he married a wife from there, and I think it influenced as well his girls, because when they run away, finally, the angels lead them out of Sodom, they run away, God destroys Sodom, And Lot's wife, we know she turns around to see, and she turns into a pillar of salt. But if you look at his daughters, they run up to like this cave, and his daughters get their dad drunk so they can have sex with him, to have children, to perpetuate their family name. I think that's kind of shady. I think that's really shady. I think that's really sad. And my point in bringing this up is, I don't necessarily think that Lot made the awful decision to go down to Sodom, but I think what happened is the shadiness of Sodom influenced Lot, and Lot didn't necessarily influence Sodom. And I think we need to be conscientious of the effect that shady. It's not so much that we should always stay away from shady, but if shady starts to influence and affect us and change our values, our mindset, our outlook, and if shady starts to cloud our love, the love that God has for us, the genuine love of God for us, and genuine love of God through us, then I think we have to make some adjustments, recalibrate, think about what's genuine love. What does genuine love do and say? And what are the values of genuine love? Because we don't want to be shady people. And maybe we've made bad decisions. Maybe we are shady, and it's time to come into the light and let God, I like to say this, it might be offensive to you, but I like this. Let God love the hell out of you. Right? Seriously, family. And bring yourself into the light of God. Whatever that is, that hell in your heart, that darkness, that shadiness, bring that into God's light, God's love, and let God redeem and transform you. We don't have to turn out and be permanently shady people. I think Lot is a tragic example of shady turned permanent. We don't have to let that happen to us. So I just want to thank you so much for watching. We'll continue this series next week, look at somebody new. Of course, I'd love to have you hit the little bell there for the notifications. It'd be awesome. Thumbs up, thumbs down, comments, all that stuff is great. You can share this with friends because it's super helpful. And, of course, we need a joke because jokes are so fantastic. Here's your joke for today. To ride a horse or not ride a horse, that is equestrian. I know. I honestly think that one's pretty bad too. But next week, of course, will be so much better. Thanks for watching.